Welcome back, everybody. As we continue to progress into realism, a good thing to do before we jump into at the Cadian Ball would be to take a look quickly as kind of a brief refresher at where we are. Right, we're in realism. And there's a lot of different things that are going on in realism compared to romanticism. And one easy way to remember one of these key differences is with the expression, the eye is the judge, not the eye. So, how does this help us understand this new literary movement that's going on? Right? So when we talk about the eye, right? We're thinking of, right, this is how vision, right? Seeing, right? Sounds the same as this eye, right? Before, when we were with romanticism, what we saw the world filtered through the author's lens, right? And that's when we looked at and talked about repeatedly the role of the imagination. So in other words, with those different works that we had in Romanticism, we saw the world not as it truly was, but through the vision, right, of the author. And that's what we called, do you remember what we called that? We called that, and this is where we picked up the term solipsism, right? And by the way, everybody, as we go through our day-to-day lives, this is we see things subjectively. We filter things, right, through our own perspective. And with the Romantics, this was key. We're shifting, we're moving into realism. Now, this is not the judge, but this. So what happens now is, in realism, right, what we get here is moving away from subjectivity, getting a little ahead of myself, but instead we're seeing objectivity. And what objectivity is about, it's about showing things realistically, right? And what's cool during this time, at the beginning of the different time frames as we move forward, we have the invention of the camera. And this is a good way to understand a shift from realism and romanticism. Before romanticism, they didn't have cameras, right? So if they had a landscape, or if you wanted to do a portrait, they had to do a painting. And that was filtered through the artist's imagination. It comes out through a lens. So we see different artists could portray the same subject differently because that's their perspective, right? That's how it was before. But now with the camera, we see things as it really is, right? So that's what we're doing. We're moving away from filtering things, authorial commentary, to seeing things as they really are in realism, objectivity. And a term that is tied up inside of this is the term verisimilitude. And when we talk about verisimilitude, what it refers to, especially in literature, is how well does the writing resemble the truth? And I'll repeat that. How well does the writing resemble the truth? And as you write that down, I'll take a little sip of coffee. And a perfect demonstration of verisimilitude that we see in different works of realism, not necessarily with Kate Chopin. Another author that you've probably come into contact with would be Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens. He was alive and writing during this time too, and he was interested in these same ideas. And with these different writers, one thing that they're really interested in capturing is the way people speak, right? So as we look in at the Cadian Ball, we'll see actual, what these writers would do is they would actually try to capture the different speech patterns of the different characters. And by looking and listening to the different speech patterns, that lets us know about the character, right? So we don't have the author telling us about a character. We see the character, we listen to how the character speaks, and then as the reader, we have to kind of figure things out, right? Because the author is distancing him or herself from the work. Authorial commentary is lessening in realism. Authorial commentary is lessening. We're not filtering things anymore. We're just putting it out there, and it's up to us. So in the Cadian Ball, what we see is we hear French, right? Sprinkles of Spanish. We have different Southern dialects. And what's interesting is that a lot of contemporary readers, and here we are in the South, in South Carolina, and they complain about having to read dialogue like this that reflects the speech patterns, where if we were to write down how we actually speak, it would sound very similar to this. For example, "Great Peter, Miss Clarice. I was not sure it was a ghost or what, standing up there plumbing the night that away." Right? Yeah. What Kate Chopin is doing, what these authors doing this time, is they're trying to capture the actual speech. And this helps us, once we become aware of this, we're able to identify characters by how they sound, which is really cool. And then we're able to unfold all these different aspects of their character based upon speech pattern, which in turn leads us to one of the themes of the Cadian Ball, which is social structure and how everything is kind of put into place based upon the character's race and how it's tied into their descendants. And we'll take a look at this idea as we continue moving forward in the next lecture.